The sun beat down on my back as I wrestled another bag of mulch into the flower bed. It was a Saturday, my only day to catch up on yard work, and the humidity was already thick enough to choke on. But every bead of sweat felt like a victory in my ongoing war against Karen Elgio, my next-door neighbor. For years, she'd been a thorn in my side, a persistent, prickly burr that refused to be shaken off. It started subtly, complaints about the height of my grass, which was perfectly within HOA regulations, the color of my mailbox, standard issue, and the noise I made while simply existing on my own property. But it escalated quickly, fueled, I suspected, by a potent cocktail of entitlement and something far uglier. Her favorite pastime, however, was trying to utilize my driveway. My driveway. For years, she would attempt to park in my driveway. It didn't matter that her own driveway was perfectly functional, or that street parking was readily available. She would always attempt to park in my driveway. It had become her mission. She'd claimed she had trouble backing out, that my driveway was just more convenient, and, on one memorable occasion, that her car looked better parked in front of my house. Each time, I politely but firmly asked her to move, the politeness growing thinner with each encounter. I even set up a camera, pointed directly at the driveway, because I knew her tactics were escalating. This Saturday, though, I had a plan. I'd been meticulously documenting her harassment for months, compiling a thick file of videos, photos, and written accounts. I'd consulted with a lawyer, who advised me to remain calm, continue documenting, and, crucially, to bait her into a legally actionable situation. I knew she was predictable, a creature of habit driven by an insatiable need to assert her perceived dominance. So, I set the trap. I deliberately parked my truck slightly crooked on the street, making it appear as though my driveway was the only accessible space nearby. I knew Karen was watching from her kitchen window. I could practically feel her beady eyes boring into my back. I even exaggerated my struggle with the mulch bags, knowing she'd see this as an opportunity, a moment of weakness to exploit. My heart hammered against my ribs, a mixture of anticipation and righteous anger. I was done being a victim. Today, Karen Elgio was going to face the consequences of her actions. Today, I would reclaim my peace. It didn't take long. I was barely halfway through spreading the mulch when I heard the unmistakable rumble of Karen's SUV. I glanced up, feigning surprise, as she pulled into my driveway. I bit back a smile. The trap was sprung. She rolled down her window, a smug expression plastered across her face. "Oh, Jackson," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I didn't want to block the road with you truck, it looks like you're having a little trouble there. Do you mind if I just park here for a few minutes? I just need to run inside and grab something. Your house is so much closer." I straightened up, wiping my brow with the back of my glove, ensuring the camera had a clear view of our interaction. "Karen," I said, my voice even and controlled. "You know you're not allowed to park in my driveway. I've asked you repeatedly not to. It's private property." She scoffed. "Oh, don't be ridiculous, Jackson. It's just for a minute. You're being so dramatic. No, Karen. You need to move your car. Now." Her face hardened. "I'll move it when I'm ready. Don't tell me what to do." She started to roll up her window. "Karen, I'm calling the police," I said, pulling out my phone. Her eyes widened, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. But the arrogance quickly returned. "Go ahead. They won't do anything. It's just a parking space." I dialed 911, calmly explaining the situation to the operator. I gave my address, described Karen's vehicle, and stated that she was trespassing on private property and refusing to move. As I spoke, Karen fumed, muttering under her breath about uppity neighbors and wasting police resources. I ignored her, focusing on the operator's questions, providing clear and concise answers. By the time I hung up, Karen was practically vibrating with rage. "You are unbelievable," she shrieked. "This is ridiculous. You're going to regret this, Jackson Baker. You just wait and see." I simply stood there, watching her, the phone still in my hand. The sweet smell of mulch filled the air, a stark contrast to the bitter taste of victory that was slowly spreading through my mouth. I had played my part, and now it was time for the authorities to play theirs. The wheels of justice, I hoped, were finally turning. The flashing lights of the police cruiser were a welcome sight. Two officers, a man and a woman, approached, their expressions serious. I met them at the edge of the driveway, briefly explaining the situation and handing over the file of evidence I had prepared. They reviewed the documents, their brows furrowing as they looked at the photos and videos of Karen's past transgressions. The female officer, Officer Davis, nodded grimly. "We've had a few calls about Ms. Elgio before." They approached Karen, who was leaning against her SUV, arms crossed, a picture of defiant indignation. Officer Davis spoke first, her voice calm but firm. "Ms. Elgio, we've received a complaint that you are trespassing on private property. Can you please explain the situation?" Karen launched into a tirade, blaming me for everything, accusing me of harassment, and portraying herself as the victim of some elaborate scheme. She claimed I was obsessed with her, that I was making up the parking incidents, and that I was motivated by, well, she didn't explicitly say it, but the implication hung heavy in the air. The male officer, Officer Miller, remained silent, observing her carefully. After several minutes of Karen's ranting, Officer Davis held up a hand. "Ms. Elgio, we've reviewed the evidence, including video footage of previous incidents. We have probable cause to believe you are in violation of trespassing laws. We are going to have to ask you to step away from the vehicle." Karen's face turned a shade of purple I didn't think was humanly possible. "You can't do this," she screamed. "This is outrageous. I'm calling my lawyer." "You are free to contact your lawyer, Ms. Elgio," Officer Miller said, his voice low and steady. "But right now, you are being placed under arrest for trespassing. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." The look on Karen's face was priceless. Disbelief, outrage, and a dawning realization of the severity of her situation warred within her eyes. She hesitated for a moment, then, with a dramatic sigh, complied. As Officer Miller snapped the handcuffs on her wrists, a small crowd of neighbors began to gather, drawn by the commotion. I stood back, watching, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. For the first time in years, I felt a measure of peace. But the show was far from over. As Officer Miller led Karen towards the police cruiser, she continued to rant and rave, directing her vitriol at me. "This isn't over, Jackson Baker," she shrieked. "You haven't seen the last of me. I'll make you pay for this. You hear me? You'll regret the day you ever crossed me." Officer Miller attempted to guide her into the back of the cruiser, but Karen resisted, digging her heels into the ground. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she yelled. "I demand to speak to your supervisor." Officer Davis moved to assist Officer Miller, and together they managed to get Karen into the vehicle. As Officer Miller was securing her seatbelt, Karen suddenly lunged forward, knocking him off balance. In the ensuing chaos, the car door swung open, and Karen, fueled by adrenaline and pure rage, broke free. She charged towards me, a wild look in her eyes. Officer Miller, scrambling to his feet, yelled, "Stop! Get back here!" But Karen was laser-focused on me. She was not stopping. Fear mixed with adrenaline coursed through my veins. I knew I had to defend myself. I braced myself for the impact, but I was too slow. Karen slammed into me, knocking me off my feet. We landed hard on the ground, her weight pressing down on me. She clawed at my face, screaming obscenities. I tried to push her off, but she was surprisingly strong. Officer Miller, finally regaining his footing, rushed towards us, shouting for Karen to stop. But she was beyond reason. She had me pinned to the ground, her fingers digging into my throat. I gasped for air, struggling to breathe. The world started to spin. This was it. After years of enduring her harassment, it was going to end like this, in my own front yard, with Karen Elgeo choking the life out of me. Just as I thought I was about to lose consciousness, Officer Miller managed to pry Karen off me. He hauled her to her feet, struggling to restrain her. She kicked and screamed, thrashing wildly in his grasp. Officer Davis rushed over to me, her face etched with concern. "Are you okay, Mr. Baker? Are you hurt?" I coughed, gasping for air, my throat burning. I think so," I managed to croak out. "But my ankle." Officer Davis examined my ankle, her touch gentle but firm. "I think it might be broken," she said, her voice grim. "We need to get you to a hospital." Meanwhile, Officer Miller was still struggling to control Karen. She continued to fight him, spitting and cursing. Finally, he managed to get her back into the police cruiser, this time securing her with extra restraints. As he slammed the door shut, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, exhaustion, frustration, and perhaps a hint of sympathy. Paramedics arrived, quickly assessing my injuries. They stabilized my ankle and loaded me into an ambulance. As we pulled away from my house, I glanced back. Karen was still inside the police cruiser, her face contorted with rage. The small crowd of neighbors stood watching, their faces a mixture of shock, disbelief, and morbid curiosity. At the hospital, X-rays confirmed that my ankle was indeed broken. The doctor set the fracture and fitted me with a cast. As I lay in the hospital bed, nursing my throbbing ankle, I couldn't help but feel a sense of surreal detachment. The events of the day had unfolded with such speed and intensity that it felt like a bizarre, distorted dream. I knew that Karen would face serious charges, trespassing, resisting arrest, and assault. But I also knew that the legal process would be long and arduous. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Karen Elgeo was a force of nature, a whirlwind of entitlement and rage. And I had no doubt that she would stop at nothing to get revenge. The trial was a media circus. The local news outlets, and even some national ones, picked up the story of the racist Karen, who had been arrested for parking in a black man's driveway and then attacking him. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and supporters of both sides. Karen, represented by a high-powered lawyer, pleaded not guilty to all charges. Her defense rested on the claim that she had been unfairly targeted and that I had deliberately provoked her. Her lawyer argued that she had been suffering from a temporary mental breakdown and that her actions were not racially motivated. I testified, recounting the years of harassment I had endured at Karen's hands. I presented the video evidence, the photos, and the written accounts. I described the fear and anxiety I had felt, the sense of being constantly watched and targeted. I spoke about the impact her actions had had on my life, the stress and emotional toll it had taken. Officer Davis and Officer Miller also testified, corroborating my account of the events leading up to Karen's arrest. They described her violent behavior, her resistance to arrest, and her unprovoked attack on me. The prosecution presented evidence of Karen's past complaints against other neighbors, revealing a pattern of harassment and discrimination. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted in cheers and applause. Karen's face crumpled, and she began to sob uncontrollably. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in prison. As she was led away, she glared at me, her eyes filled with hatred. "This isn't over, Jackson Baker," she screamed. "I'll get you. I promise you, I'll get you for this." I watched her go, my heart filled with a mixture of relief and apprehension. I knew that 8 years was a long time, but it wasn't forever. And I knew that Karen Elgeo was not a woman who would easily let go of a grudge. In the weeks and months that followed, I tried to rebuild my life. I moved to a new house, in a different neighborhood, far away from Karen and her toxic presence. I focused on my work, my friends, and my family. I slowly began to heal, both physically and emotionally. But I never forgot what had happened. And I knew that, even behind bars, Karen Elgeo was still a threat. I knew that one day, she would be released. And I knew that when that day came, I would have to be ready. The battle may have been won, but the war, I feared, was far from over. I installed a new security system, and I started taking self-defense classes, preparing for the inevitable day when Karen would come looking for revenge. I lived with the constant awareness that my peace was fragile, my safety precarious. And I knew that I would have to remain vigilant, forever looking over my shoulder, waiting for the storm to return.